Andalusia Marine, located in Andalusia, Alabama, your express, all-wheel stick steering, Polarcraft, Starcraft, or Veranda pontoon dealer. One call heating, air, and refrigeration, Mr. Stephen Dubb, air conditioning guy you can trust. RMC Mechanical Contractors, located in Chelsea, Alabama. Give us a call for all your industrial contracting needs. Styler Arms, located in Bessemer, Alabama. You can also pick these rifles up at Simmons Sporting Goods. That is a Steyr Scout in that picture. I've been hunting with a pro hunter for about 30 years, guy. One of the finest rifles made. Pick one up today, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Alpha Plumbing, Mr. D. Robinson. He's been with us since day one. Call him for any of your plumbing needs, a plumbing guy you can trust. CT Ward Power Sports, Camden, Alabama on Highway 28. Your Excel center console, side console, Godfrey pontoon, Hustler lawnmower, and Mercury and Yamaha service dealer. Power brakes. If you want to get your total boat control under control, get you a set of these. Give old Chad Clifton a call. www.mypowerbrakes.com. All right, guys, welcome back to CrappieKast In-Depth Series. I'm Shane Jones.
I'm John Fong.
And today, guys, we're going over the in-depth series on tackle for catching crappie. John and I went over mapping. We went over, in detail in mapping too, episodes actually. Now, John talked about schooling crappie, and I did last week's show, and we're going to get into some tackle now, just stuff that we use to catch these fish, and hopefully share with y'all some tips, and you may pick up a few, because you're going to run into these schooling crappie, because you're going to be out there looking for them now. So, John, let's just go into, the basic, the setup that you use, and then we can go into, different types of setups you can use, but just discuss with them what you're going with when you find the schooling fish.
Okay, I'm going to try to, for those of you that are just listening, can't see what we're talking about, but I'm still going to put it on the screen. You can come back and look at it later. Of course, the rod I brought's got plenty of fish line on it, but I mean, that lets you know it's been working. But this is a little 5-foot outlaw pole, and Jessica and I, 90% of the time, this is what we're using. We got it paired with a Cast King. That's a Sharky 3 1000 series reel. They're very tough. I am very rough on them, and they hold together. I mean, that thing's covered in goo and slime, and I'll be honest with you, I should be ashamed of myself for not taking better care of it, but they hold together. It's got some 5-pound, right here, 5-pound K9 Crappie braid on it. That's when we're casting. That's what we use all the time. A jig on there. I was shooting some docks with this thing here at the house, and that is a light wire 16th ounce jig with a little gray and black stinger from Limits Tackle. That's a light wire hook. When I'm shooting docks, I like a light wire hook because you get hung up a lot. And I'm not having to tie on all the time. I can just bend that hook back. There's another. Here we go. This is a little bit heavier. It's the same style hook, but it's just a heavier hook. So if I'm fishing brush or, stuff like that, I'll go with this. I just use that light wire when I'm shooting docks and stuff. I mean, the fish still are fine. I just bend that hook and get it loose when I hit that cross member, or something like that on a boathouse. And we're talking about these plastics. Jessica and I went, it's a stinger. I guess that's what some people call it, but that black shark's hard to beat. Jessica and I went Sunday and caught 30 fish on one plastic before I had to swap it out. We ended up keeping a 2-man limit. She was using the same thing. It wasn't this color, but it's still a good color. Steve had sent us some stuff with it was like a clear bait with some gold flake in it. It worked really, really well. We go to the long pole. I cut this off of it. We'll buy these bobber stops from 6 cents. That doesn't seem like much, but the quality of these bobber stops is what makes it. They don't slide as easily when you catch that fish and you're having to put it back every time. So what we'll basically do is we'll take a tungsten, and I think this is a quarter, and we'll put 2 of those bobber stops below it, and then 1 above it to secure that. Of course, we wouldn't have it this close to the bait. I just cut this off. But anyway, those 2 stops with a tungsten in the middle, and then 1 on top to keep it from sliding up and down. And typically, it'll run it about 8 to 10 inches above the bait, and that'll be with 15-pound fluorocarbon, cigar fluorocarbon. That's what we run. Sorry about that. But anyway, that's what we'll run on our longer poles. Is that 15-pound fluorocarbon?
Right. Is it clear, John? Is it clear?
It's clear.
That's what I thought.
I like it because it seems like to me I get less wraps on the end of that long pole, and that happens a lot, especially when you first start using a long pole or you get in the wind and stuff. You'll start, get the wraps on the end of the pole, and it's frustrating when it does get wrapped like that with that 15-pound fluorocarbon. You can just sling it out the side and shake the tip of the pole and it'll come loose. And instead of trying to look 14 foot down a pole and decide which way to get it.
Yeah, and slide it in, and then you always go the wrong way. I do that all the time. That's good stuff, man. So you're using a quarter ounce most of the time, John? Is that your go-to on your long rod? Is that mostly what it? That's
just what I cut off this machine. I was
fishing
shallower stuff.
Yeah.
Like if I get in a windy situation and I want to get it down there quick, and I'm going to get it down and try to dead stick hold on something, and I'll go heavier. Man, a lot of times I won't necessarily go to like a half or something. I'll double stack 2 of these quarters.
Just a profile or something.
Yeah.
I got you. That's good information, guys. Instead of using that one big half ounce, even though tungsten's a lot smaller, but instead of using something that looks big as your thumb, because a lot of times those fish are keying on that weight and hit it. I've had people talk about that and seen it.
You gotta really watch it on that long pole before you get that bait to that fish. You want to make sure that the bait is below the weight, because the weight's gonna fall. The weight's falling, and the jig will be up above it because the weight's heavier. So before you get 5 to 6 feet from that fish that you want to present that to, you need to go ahead and let the jig pendulum down below the weight, because obviously the fish sees the weight, he starts targeting in on it, and you trying to take it away from him and hoping he sees the jig. It just messes the whole presentation up.
Yeah, that's good information, guys. Like, always try to set it on the other side of the fish and let it swing down to them. Some people run a 64th to 32nd below that quarter or half ounce weight, and you got to give it time to swing down under it, then approach the fish with it, because if you do it too quick, like I said, you're liable to bump the fish, scare it. You don't want it to know the game you're trying to play on it. So that's good information right there, big time.
When the fish are hot, I'll put an 8 below my peg jig, because that way it whips around quicker below it. But if you're having to use that tiny stuff, just be aware that you're gonna need to work that in that time for that jig to fall below it into your presentation.
Yeah, you're still using a smaller profile baits right now, John. You won't increase your bait size probably till it gets, or it depends on the fish, or you wait till it's getting a lot cooler.
Honestly, I probably won't increase it till me and you go to Grenada in February. It
works. Yeah, that's true. It works.
It works for me, and I guess that's what I got confidence in. So that's what I stick with.
That's cool. Yeah, that's good information. Your casting rod. So we talked about schooling fish last week's show, and now we're talking about kind of tackle for it. And John, that rod you showed, that 5-foot outlaw, I use a 6-foot Lost Creek custom rod, same setup. I'm throwing hair jigs and stuff at them. That's the same setup. Just you cast at brush piles and you cast at schooling fish. It's the same setup, is it not?
It is. It's just you usually have to go a little bit heavier to get down to those fish in their school, and we talked about in our last in-depth episode. You might have to throw that 8th where you were throwing that 6th.
Right. It depends on the depth and the speed. John went over that last show, and we'll kind of touch on it, I'm sure. But those schooling fish, it depends on how fast they're moving. Some of them are creeping, and some of them are darting. I mean, that is the anticipation of catching those things are fun. I seen some schooling fish this weekend. Hanging around John and Shiloh and them, I haven't really looked at a lot of stuff on that river because where I grew up, because I'm always in the creeks, brush piles. But I started looking at these creek mouths and this standing timber, and there's already fish out there starting to get around, and of course they're aggravating to catch, but they're already starting to get in that gear, to move, and that's going to be a fun time of year. It's coming.
Shane, I hadn't even talked to you about this. I've been
Go
playing
ahead.
too. I found it's actually 2-pound test.
Whoa.
So I was throwing. I've had it on a reel. I was trying to throw a real light. 30 seconds. I think it was. Might have been a 64. I tied it.
Right.
And we're messing with some fish that we couldn't get to eat. And I was just trying to, just stall something out over them. So I said, let me get some real light line and just see what I can do with it. And if I could get the bait off, with it being that light. And that line right there, it surprised me how tough it was and how hard it was to break, even though it's 2-pound test.
What kind of line was that, John? I've used some 2-pound tests. Tommy and I experimented with some.
Yeah, trout SOS.
SOS, never seen that. Because, the breaking strength in that stuff's, 4 or 5 pounds. It's not 2 pounds by no means.
Yeah, but this is a rarity that we use. Typically this 5-pound braid's what we cast, but we've been experimenting with some.
That's awesome, man. Like I said, tying those different size jig, it depends on, like John's saying, the brush piles, the fish that you're trying to catch, or they're schooling, or they're under a dock. It all depends on what weight, So, John, if I tell you, hey, man, I've got a dock that's 10 foot deep, and I've got some big fish underneath it, it's not a lot of structure in there, So, what rod are you gonna grab, and what jig are you gonna grab? We're 10 foot deep under a dock. There's no brush piles in there. They're just trying to dock for shade. Not too many cross members on there. What rod and what jig setup and stuff are you gonna grab to go up to that dock?
I'm on a little 5-footer, like I said, 90% of the times what we're rolling with. I'm gonna pull that. Go ahead and I'm gonna pull that jig back up under here. If you want to get straight up under the rod and get the rod as level with the water as you can, and don't look at the dock. Look at the water that's barely right out in front of the dock. Because typically, whatever you look at, that's where the jig's going to hit. I don't know what it is about it.
That's exactly right.
But if you look at the dock, you're going to come back with a ding, and you hit the dock. But I see people want to pull the jig to the side of the rod, pull the jig directly back up under the pole toward the reel, and get the rod as level as you can with the water. And I'm going to throw a 16th and a small plastic, because that's when I shoot docks, I typically throw plastics. That's if you're hitting before it ever gets to the dock, your tip's too far down. If you're hitting the dock, it's probably too far up, or your release point is not correct. You'll get that pole parallel with the water, and you release it right where it comes to the tip, or when it gets back tight, and you looking down right at that water before it becomes dock, you're gonna get it up under there.
Right, that's good tips right there. And the only way to really learn this, guys, is to be on the water, because you can practice shooting, but as far as placement, what John's saying, aiming at that water, that's a big thing. I heard you and Richard Falk talking at the expo about keeping your hands on top of each other. Like, keep your hand here and your shooting jig under there, and that kind of lines everything up. It's just like shooting a recurve or throwing a baseball, anything. The more consistent you can have your technique, I guess, the better you're going to shoot, right, John?
That's correct. And it's art to getting it where it hit right there at the, where the dock starts, and making it skip up under there. In some cases you don't want it to skip way up under there, because you might have another cross member on the boat dock, or a rope or something like that. So you're still wanting to make those casts the right length. if that makes sense. All right, so we've been given a tool, forward facing sonar. We know that the fish are 20 feet from that transducer. You do not have to shoot it 35. Shoot it just over the
All
school,
right.
enough where you can fall and come over the top of the school. The hot fish identifies it. You work it from there. You catch a fish.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Go ahead, John.
yeah, if 100% that you can throw a 16th ounce jig 45 feet, that's outstanding. But if the fish are at 25 or 30 feet, try to throw it just past there, because we're already struggling keeping that boat still, especially if you're in the wind. So if you go with somebody, try your best. Those fish at 25, drop it in there at 27 or 28. Don't throw to 35. Because what I'm going to tell you is, if you're on the boat with me, I'm going to be like, reel, 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 reel. And that, I mean, I'm not trying to be offensive to you. I'm just saying, I want you to get the bait
Yeah,
close.
get to those hot fish, right? Exactly.
And then I'm like, reel, 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 reel. All right, stop. Now let it fall in there. And if you keep hearing me say reel, 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 that means you're throwing way too far every time. And I tell people that come on the boat, I'm like, all right, you too far left, go ahead and reel it up. I'm not going to sit there and keep watching something I know that's not getting the area of the fish. If you're too far right, too far. And what happens is, people that you have on the boat with you will typically do the same thing. They'll have them make the same mistake. They'll be right all the time, or they'll be left all the time. So what I tell them is, all right, wherever you think it's at, if they were throwing left, I want you to throw a little bit more right. And then they start dialing themselves in at that point. And it's just so you can have the best time on the boat. I'm really not trying to be ugly about it or anything, but I want every cast you make to be close or in the strike zone.
Yeah, I run into that a lot too, John. They're like, I don't see my jig. It's not in the cone, buddy, And you're trying to get them down. The worst thing I'll run into is people getting out there and getting close, and they click their bail too early if the fish are down 8 or 10 foot. And here comes the bait swinging back at the boat before you get to the fish. It's a bad habit because people are used to casting the banks and just running the banks in the spring. And like you was talking about shooting on the dock, a lot of people click their bail as soon as it gets under there. And if those fish are a little deeper, you don't want to do that. You want to get in there to them, and get those fish stirred up and see which ones are hot, like John was saying earlier.
Another common mistake is people they'll want to let that jig get all the way down to the fish before they do flip their bail back over. Well, the line is going to keep falling. So what you can do, you can manipulate the depth that it's going to. Go ahead and when you get that bait I'd say 5 feet from those fish, go ahead and flip that bail over.
There you go.
And you got enough give to allow them, unless the boats get pushed back. You got enough give that you can still give that bait to those fish. Now let me tell you this: when you go with somebody and you're not running that trolling motor, you are already at a disadvantage, because the guy that's running the trolling motor, he can push into that pile before he casts, and he's got a little bit of momentum going into that pile. So when his jig's falling, he's got it at the perfect fall. Well, if you cast and he didn't have that momentum going into that pile with a trolling motor, that boat might be backing up. Well, your jig's not going to fall the same way his is. So if you ever go with somebody like that, what are they doing differently? Well, running the trolling motor is certainly an advantage to the person that's casting.
Exactly. And John and we're real good about saying, hey, everybody's into, getting antsy about wanting to cast. Hold on, man. Let me get the boat position right. And because you do have forward facing sonar, so you have the advantage. You know where the fish are, you know how deep they are. So, you have to be kind of patient a little bit, approaching these fish, because like John said, if he hasn't hit the trolling motor and you cast and all of a sudden he hits the trolling motor, your bait may get under the fish. I mean, you have to kind of, and if you shoot too far, like John was saying on the dock, especially if those fish are 22 feet and you throw 35, it's hard to track your jig. I can't track it. All I can do is guess. I'd rather see it splash, like me and John, I'll fish with John Labor Day, and I could see my jig splash. It was so easy. John was running it just typically the way I do it. So we didn't miss a beat. But He's got you right there where you casting, 5, 8 foot on the other side of the fish where you can actually track your jig. And that's what you want to be able to do, especially when you're carrying people that haven't experienced that kind of fishing.
And it's a lot easier to pick the jig up if you're throwing at the length where the fish are. You know what I'm saying? All right. When I see somebody cast, I'm expecting to hit right past where the fish are. I'm not expecting to be looking out there 40, 45 to see where it hit and then had to find it. Now, with the bigger screens and stuff, is it easier? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've been running that 16, and then I was messing around on my little boat yesterday, and I went back to that 12. I was like, golly, I didn't realize how much I'm enjoying it. But that's part of it, and I feel blessed to be able to have one. But you can catch fish from a 7 to a 22-inch screen. Do not be discouraged by what Just go, and your eyes will start to pick it up according to what unit you have.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, you ever hunted in the cutover? They're like, yeah. I said, how you used to just pick up a ear flicker or a horn shine? I said, you're going to get better and better at picking up this jig on this screen or tracking your jig. And the good thing is that by the end of the day, they're usually like, okay, I get it, especially if we had a lot of opportunities to throw at different fish. Like John's saying, these are tips to save you a bunch of time. I run an electronics trip. Actually, I got to run one late this evening, matter of fact. And John runs them, and we're just trying. A lot of those people, hey, man, I just want to make sure I know what I'm looking at. I want to fine-tune my stuff. And, when you're running these guide trips and stuff like that, you can, that's what you want to be able to do, is fine-tune them in.
That was one of our buddies. Hey, another thing is, I typically, when I'm running the trolling boat, before I want somebody to cast, I say, all right, go. You know what I'm saying? Right. That's what I'm trying to do. And I think me and Richard Falk talked about this at the expo. It's simple. Everybody's like that. How pretty they want the screen to be clear and all that. What I want is that fish to be as bright as it can be and my jig to be as bright as it can be. And I want to see both of them glowing with the same intensity. If they are, I know everything's lined up.
Yes, everything's lined up just like a level on a board. That's exactly right. Because a lot of people's like, man, I went right by that fish. No, you didn't. That fish didn't react, didn't move, didn't do anything. And they're like, really? I said, look. And a lot of times I'll shoot out there. John does the same thing. I'll shoot out there and say, hey, man, cast right there. And they're like, oh, well, that's the line I need to be. And, most people that's fished before, or most, like John said, they'll adapt to where that transducer is on your boat. And that's what you want. You want it perfect lined up. And then that fish is either going to spook, move out of the way, or track your bait and eat it. So.
Well, Shane, I got to go catch some bait, buddy.
John's been flathead fishing, guys. I told him we'll just do a quick little segment. Hey, these are nothing but tips, guys, and give you something to listen to and be like, sometimes it's just reassurance of stuff you already know. I mean, a lot of people know all these things, but we're just trying to help you guys. John and I get messages daily about how y'all's, productivity catching fish, y'all's success, and we appreciate every bit of it. We're going to be live Thursday. We got Jonathan and Wyatt Phillips. It's going to be a great show. You better tune in because that 10-year-old is wound up, and I'm fired up for him, man, because I was 10 years old, and I can't imagine being on that stage like that.
Big Wyatt, he's going to be telling it now.
He's going to be. He's a good kid, but y'all tune in Thursday. Well, it's actually tomorrow. Thursday live 7 p.m. We're gonna be live, and like I said, these in-depth series we're gonna keep on, and we're gonna keep on putting them out. Excuse me, and y'all give us some topics to cover that you want. Like I said, I've been getting a lot of feedback, man. We're at 800, 900 downloads already since we started this thing, and this is episode 5. So I think we're doing pretty good, and people are giving us a little feedback. But appreciate you, John. Go out there and catch some bait and go play with some more flatheads, and appreciate it, buddy. I'll see you.
All right, buddy.